The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. Good crack-a-noon to our friends on the East Coast. I'm Todd Obert of Productive Corporation, joined here alongside me virtually in the sweltering heat in Boston, Brian Walsh of Cove Data Protection. We're going to talk about Cove's cloud-based disaster recovery and some kind of cool stuff that they have. And as you saw, I mean, talking about you know, true backups, not just these snapshots that you think are doing a full backup that are not. So he'll get into data differential and all this stuff, and we'll talk about how much time you're spending on backups, and really kind of our angle, as you know, as a security company, improving your security by getting the data off network, and then hop into a live demo. But very cool stuff that I think you're really going to enjoy. But first, let's meet Productive in 1 minute or less. So, who is Productive Corporation? Well, I'm glad that you asked, because we help improve the security posture of mid-sized companies. And we have offerings and expertise to help you understand your overall security needs. We also implement, test, and optimize the products that we sell, whether that's security assessments, managed detection and response, next-gen firewall, mail, web security, backup. We have the services for you. We also produce content like these educational webinars. They're all on the website. We also produce, kind of white papers and other knowledge. You can find it at productivecorp.com/solving security. The bottom line is we have a lot of things we could do to help you, whether it's assessment, implementation, licensing, or security services. Help at productivecorp.com comes to all of us. So if you just have a general question, you need help, send us the email, and somebody on the team will respond. So really appreciate that. And like I said at the top of the broadcast, we have Brian Walsh, who is here to tell us about Cove Data Recovery. Cove is part of Enable, which I'm sure you've heard of. And we started working with them because we were working with AdLumen, which we really like in the MDR space. Really, really cool technology. I think you're going to enjoy it. Let's give a warm virtual round of applause for Brian Walsh. Brian?
Thank you very much, Todd. Really appreciate the very warm welcome here. So hopefully you can now see my screen. And we're just going to start with, just as Todd mentioned, we'll talk today about Cove Data Protection, Backup and Disaster Recovery, but it is part of the larger Enable family of platforms. So with Enable, we provide end-to-end cyber resiliency, giving organizations the ability to consolidate and really bring together IT and security operations. So we offer endpoint management, security operations, and again, what we're here to talk about today is data protection and disaster recovery. Now, it's a very hot topic in the industry, cybersecurity, right, and cyber resiliency. And I'd classify it as three core challenges that we see across our 14,000 customers today. They need to go and manage increasing data growth, right? As folks accelerate their digital journeys, it drives data, exponentially more data. As they look to the proliferation of SaaS applications and hybrid environments, it all lends itself to data volumes being exponentially larger than they were 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, right? And the underlying attack surface that proliferation creates means they really need to have the right security posture in order to protect these assets, right? And the smartest criminals in the world today, they truly know to go after and attack backup and recovery infrastructure, right? So cyber attacks continue to be on the rise. And 90% of those victims in 2024 saw threat actors attempt to compromise the backup and recovery estate, right? Because those criminals know if they get their hands on those jewels, they sort of have organizations dead to rights in terms of paying out any sort of ransom demand, right? So they very much target that backup and recovery infrastructure. So folks are mindful of protecting the data, managing that data growth, and hardening that underlying infrastructure to secure the backup copies. But then the reason we do backups is all about restore, right? And as that proliferation gets exponentially wider, recovery can be something that's different from your on-prem environment, that it is from your SaaS applications, that it is from your infrastructure as a service, public cloud workloads, right? So you need a reliable, confident way to actually get that data back if disaster were to strike. And disaster can mean a number of different things, right? We talk about the cyber event, but you still have the act of God scenarios, fire, flood type of disasters. Additionally, you have other scenarios where you just might lose hardware, hardware fails, or someone just fat fingers a file, right? So there's all these different ways an organization may have to recover or restore their data, right? And across these three core challenges, there's really a solve out there, right? And as it comes to managing that increasing data growth, you need an intelligent software that is fundamentally going to move less data, because by moving less data, you can meet your backup windows and you can get that recovery point objective to where you need it to be. As it relates to that cyber threat where criminals are attacking backup and recovery infrastructure, you need to eliminate as much of that attack surface as possible, right? So in order to do that, you have to remove the backup infrastructure from the network so that if a criminal or a bad actor is to get into your network, they fundamentally don't have anything to go after and attack, right? So you got to reduce that attack surface. And then as it relates to handling recovery or data restore, you need to be proactively testing these things, right? So you test your backups in the form of testing the restore so that it is not an afterthought and left behind, so that when disaster strikes, you are prepared for those different scenarios. And you can sort of give your business the expectation of how long it may take to actually get that data back in place. And even being able to recover in that worst case scenario of a cyber event, being able to do a restore into an isolated network. And that's really where N-able has you covered, right? And that's where Cove comes in, because we can very confidently and reliably be able to address these three core challenges, right? So when it comes to managing data growth, our proprietary technology that we'll talk a little bit about here on the next slide, but it's called Cove True Delta Differencing. What it does is it moves 60 times less data than your traditional snapshot or image-based backup technology. So it allows you to start creating policy where you can actually run more backups, because when the backup's 60 times smaller, the backup runs faster and it moves less data and requires less storage. And that's ultimately how you manage the total cost of ownership and how you manage that growth. Now, as we look at sort of what's top of mind for a lot of IT leaders and business leaders, is this concept of resiliency. So Cove delivers this direct to cloud methodology associated with backup. And I'd say it goes beyond a methodology, it's an architecture, right? So it's entirely web-based management in the cloud. So we're fundamentally creating that secure isolation, or what I would refer to as an operational logical air gap from our customers' networks, so that if that bad actor enters, they don't have any visibility into the underlying backup software, the backup application, or its storage. It's all deployed in a multi-tenant fashion, and there's these core tenants associated with resiliency. So we have built-in multi-factor authentication, built-in encryption end-to-end, as well as the built-in immutability. And then as you define roles within your organization, you can put role-based access controls in place so that the right level of folks have the right level of access. And then when it comes to your data recovery and how that ties into your security posture, we do a couple of things. We call it continuity, but we do automated recovery testing. So what this is it's a sandbox boot screenshot that happens every 2 weeks so that you get that proactive notification that you actually have a recoverable copy of your backup. And we'll talk through this and show it off in the demo, but it's a completely automated way to actually verify that you have recoverable copies of your backups. A tremendous artifact that you can then hand over to an external stakeholder like a cyber insurer or any sort of external auditor who may be keen to understand sort of what your recovery posture looks like. Now, in that scenario where we're doing this automated recovery testing, it is not a usable copy. It's just there to provide that validation of restore. We can take it a step further with a technology we call standby image, where what we're doing is a continuous restore from every backup session, and that copy is usable. And when we do that, we can take that verification screenshot that we do in the recovery testing every single session that restore takes place. Now, because this is a usable copy, it dramatically reduces that recovery time objective. So if you have 2 data center sites, you could potentially be hosting a standby image in your alternate or secondary data center location so that if you lost site A, you'd have that image already pre-booted at site B. You could also do this into, say, like an Azure IaaS tenant, where maybe you only have the one singular data center site, but you want that flexibility to be able to spin up in the cloud. So we provide that sort of failover, low RTO capability with a cloud provider like Microsoft Azure. So really helping organizations manage the data growth, deliver the resiliency that the modern business needs, and give consistent, reliable results when it comes to data recovery. Now, there's a lot of players in this market. What makes Cove different, right? So what we're doing is different than other solutions out there in the market because we're delivering this as SaaS. So it's direct to cloud, but it's this concept of true delta differencing that fundamentally is going to make the architecture work, right? Because your traditional image-based snapshot lives at a hypervisor level, and it performs the backup and leverages a data mover that lives outside of that virtual machine or outside of that system that you're looking to protect. And it, simply put, can't track the level of change that exists in the growing data world that we live in today to keep up and minimize the amount of data that gets moved and then the amount of data that gets stored. So Cove, we actually put this piece of software we call Backup Manager on the individual machine. So it lives on the physical server, it lives on the guest virtual machine, and each one of those software agents acts as a data mover, and it performs client-side deduplication and compression, encrypts that data at the source, and moves it to the Cove Global Private Cloud, where we have 30 data centers across the globe in 17 unique countries. And it's this process of operating inside the OS that is going to move 60 times less data. And why do smaller backups matter? Well, they matter because it allows you to eliminate that backup infrastructure. So there's nothing that needs to be managed, maintained, patched on your networks from a backup and recovery standpoint. Because it's delivered as SaaS, it's super simple to deploy, to onboard, to scale as the organization needs, right? And it eliminates that attack surface. So there's a significant security benefit and there's a significant labor efficiency benefit because too many organizations that are sort of in that small to mid-size range, they just don't have a tremendous IT staff to be doing all the things that the business needs them to be doing, to be moving their modernization and digital journey forward. So eliminating some of that administration time is super, super beneficial to a lot of organizations. Now, the other element of that lightweight data transfer is that fundamentally backups are going to run faster. And when those backups run faster, you can run more frequent backups. So what that does is it allows organizations to get out of this mindset that I run my backups at night when nobody's on the network. If you just run your backups one time per night, you potentially leave yourself exposed to 24 hours of data loss, right? So this technology allows organizations to run that backup as frequently as every 15 minutes. Now, a lot of organizations will structure that to run hourly or every 2 hours, but given the lack of data that needs to move, you can run these backups every 15 minutes. So you take a recovery point objective from 1 day down to 15 minutes, and then it will consume less bandwidth, ultimately consuming less storage. So it delivers a lower total cost of ownership across the entire backup and recovery infrastructure stack. So
Yeah.
very, very beneficial.
And Brian, let me add, I mean, you mentioned this, but I want to emphasize it. I mean, the way Cove does their technology, they don't charge extra for data. I mean, it's basically they know they do it so efficiently that it's not like some of these other solutions where you pay for the solution and then all of a sudden you have, a charge for an extra terabyte or 2 terabytes or 3 terabytes or whatever the number is. Your price, you have it. So for budgeting and use, you know what your cost is going to be, which I think is super important.
You're absolutely right, Todd. So it's extremely differentiating. You'll see it on the right-hand quadrant or third in terms of the simplicity and the predictability around price. I think that's what gives folks a lot of grief through the years with their existing backup and recovery solutions. They pay someone for the software licensing. They need to stand up some compute infrastructure to run that backup application. They write it to local storage, and then they make some sort of copy replication process to go offsite. That may be a secondary location that they have. It may be a cloud provider, but you effectively are paying multiple different vendors for the backup and recovery outcome or the recovery outcome. Now with Cove, we make it very simple. Your cloud storage is included in the price. You're simply going to pay based off of the number of devices that you protect. So a device would be a server or would be a workstation. And then we do also provide the ability to protect Microsoft 365. So you would pay per the number of users in the context of Microsoft 365. So we provide this unified cloud-based management console to protect your servers, your workstations, your Microsoft 365. All of that resiliency is built in by default, right? So we're creating that air gap. Mandatory MFA, mandatory encryption, mandatory immutability. You'd put the role-based access controls in place for the right level of folk. And then our global private cloud. Here in North America, we meet ISO 27001, SOC 1 Type 2, SOC 2 Type 2, HIPAA, PCI, and NIST 800-53. So you're getting that simplicity on the pricing, you're getting that resiliency and security built in. And then effectively, all you need to do is once you deploy, you need to become an administrator of how do I do restores. Now we can automate a lot of that, but for your on-demand use cases, you can do a file folder restore, you can do a bare metal or your physical to physical restore for say a workstation or a physical server, or you could do an on-demand reactive image-based restore back into your on-prem hypervisor or potentially even into an Azure cloud. So you have a lot of flexibility with how you need to do the data recovery, because again, as I said from sort of the outset, all disasters are going to be a little bit different, ranging from accidental file deletion all the way out to a complete devastating event like a cyber attack, right? So you need a solution that can sort of cover the end-to-end spectrum on that front. We do provide 30-day proof of values. We have a monthly recurring webinar series we call the Master of Disaster class that talks through your traditional disaster recovery. And then we also have a Master of Ransomware Readiness, which is talking more to the ransomware cyber event. But I'm gonna pivot now into give you a look and feel for what this platform actually looks like. So I have my screen shared here. and we're logged into Cove. You just hit a web browser at backup.management. It prompts you for your username, password, and 2FA credentials. And then what you see is all of your protected assets. So you see your devices, your servers, and your workstations, any Microsoft 365 tenants. You see the overall health of your backups in terms of what's completed, what's failed, what's maybe completed with errors. And on the far right, you'll see what backup assets have checked in inside of the last day, between 1 to 2 days, or outside of a 2-day window. So you can hold yourself in compliance on a couple of different fronts with respect to the systems that you're actually protecting. Everything multi-tenanted, as I described. So if you have locations in different parts of the world, you can guarantee data sovereignty in 17 regions of the world. But if all your assets were, say, in North America or in the United States, we can guarantee that the data stays in the US or it stays in Canada. Now, what I want to highlight here is when I come into my Southern pane, I can see all the servers and workstations I'm backing up. I can see how much data I'm protecting. I see how much data is being stored based off my policies. I see the red light, green light reporting for the last 4 weeks, so I can scroll that to see that all my backups are completed. I see when the last successful session was. I see what my retention policy is and what my profile is. And a profile is just another word for the backup policy. But if I step on one of these devices, I'll step on this particular server. And this is a server where we're running the backup every 4 hours. And you'll see the system state is about 35 gig. The file and folder selection's about 50 gig. And when we're running these every 4 hours, we see the amount of data that's changed between those backup sessions is about 2.2 gig here on the file and folder selection, 1.9 on the system state. But all we move across the wire is going to be 2.2 meg here and under 50 meg here. So between these two, we're moving about 50 meg across the wire. So that's the efficiency of this technology that allows you to run this more frequent backup without having to pay for the storage, and you create whatever retention policy you want around that. And I can actually launch from this console onto that particular agent, so that if I needed to go do, say, a file or folder level restore, I can actually access that right here. So when I launch onto the console, I come into the restore tab. What it does is it effectively catalogs and indexes all of my backup sessions based off the policies I've created for this particular device. So here we're keeping 30 dailies and 6 monthlies and 3 annuals, and we have a 4-hour RPO, so that backup runs every 4 hours. And once that catalog builds itself out, I'll be able to drill down to one of these point in times to do a file folder restore. So someone fat fingered a file on Monday, or on Sunday, let's say, when they were doing some work late at night and they realized it first thing Monday morning. So you come in and you select the Monday session at 8:51, and then I would drill down into my drive letters and go pick a specific file or folder that I want to restore, and I choose to restore it to the original location or a new location on that particular server. So very quick and easy for a technician to actually go in and perform a very basic file folder level restore. Not the most
Brian?
involved process.
Oh, I was going to say, how long does this take to get set up and get customized for a customer's environment?
Very quickly. So all the plumbing's already built for you here, right? If you were to have a blank console, you'd actually, like when folks start with their 30-day proof of value, we ask them to set up a profile, and there's actually usually 3 that are pre-built for them: a 1-hour RPO, a 24-hour RPO, and a 4-hour RPO. And they can take that and apply that to their devices. But effectively what we're specifying here is the data we're backing up, the frequency that the backup job runs at, and then we'll default some filters and exclusions for them. And then we have them create a retention policy. You see that there's a 30-day default here. But you could come in and modify that policy to be 60 dailies or 90 dailies or 12 monthlies or 3 annuals. So again, because you don't get billed for the consumed or used storage, you create whatever retention policy you want. And then once you create the profile, once you create the retention policy, you're ready to be able to deploy. So all you do to deploy is select server workstation here, and then you make 5 decisions. Where in my multi-tenanting console do I want to install it? A lot of folks will do it at the top level of the root. They assign that retention policy they created, so 30 dailies, 3 monthlies, and then that profile where I'm going to run a backup every 4 hours. I pick my operating system, and then I choose, do I want the platform to manage the encryption key, or do I want to self-manage? And once I make those, I'll have an executable that's very specific to those decisions I made on the previous screen. So it's my tenant, it's my retention policy, it's my profile, this is the OS I want. So all I do is I download this and I run it on whatever virtual machine workstation I want to protect. Completely silent installation, doesn't require a reboot. It's not even going to give you a prompt or a pop-up. So it runs within about 30 seconds and it will light up within your Cove dashboard. We can give you automation policies and scripts to deploy this to hundreds of thousands of devices in a matter of minutes. So there's really not a lot of time for that onboarding. So that's why we say you can really scale very rapidly and truly limitlessly, because each one of those agents that runs is its own data mover. So it enables you to scale quite elegantly. I'll wrap here by talking about just that more advanced recovery. So we have the automated recovery testing, which is where every 2 weeks we're providing a boot screen screenshot verification in a sandbox environment. Again, a tremendous artifact to hand over to a cyber insurer that wants to see that you're actually doing proactive test restores of your environment. So every 2 weeks, you'll see your UI updated here. You're also going to get an automated email alert that pushes to whatever recipients you want that give you this screenshot validation and how long that recovery process took. So recovery duration here was 25 minutes and 19 seconds, and when it took place. Again, it's not a usable copy, but it provides those stopgaps where typically most folks aren't proactively doing the test restores because they don't have the time and they don't have the people to go do it. And then when you actually need to do restores, you can do a one-time restore. So that's that very flat-footed, on-demand, reactive approach to doing a restore. Or you can leverage the standby image technology where every single time that a backup completes, we are proactively doing that restore into an alternate environment, whether it be Hyper-V or ESX or an Azure tenant, where every single time a backup completes, we have a bootable image sitting on the other side. And then when we're doing that, we can take that screenshot verification every single time that backup runs. So a very elegant way to deliver that near zero recovery time objective that organizations are always striving for without consuming a lot of budget, without consuming a lot of resources to do it. So an entirely automated process. And these are the things we talk through when we get into that 30-day proof of value with a test environment to show our customers just how simple, efficient, scalable a platform like this can be to really touch on the resiliency that an organization needs in the face of the modern threats that exist.
Hey, so Brian, I have a question here from you, from one of the attendees that is talking about initial seeding. It says, I'm just going to read it to you. Where's the limitation, source network or Cove target? For example, 3 terabytes from our network at 200, I guess, megs per second or something. How long? We are required to do a DR test, shutting down production and managing to a DR site image. How is that accomplished? DR test needs to be transparently connected.
Yep. So when this true delta differencing technology, the first backup is a full, and then from that point forward, every backup thereafter is what we would refer to as a delta differential. So that delta differential, we're scanning all the file save set, all the files, or walking that file system and only moving unique changes. So every single backup is still its own independent point of restore. So the bottleneck on that initial seed is generally speaking, it's not going to be on the Cove side. We get a lot of 10 gig hops going in and out of our data centers. So that first backup, let's say it's 3 terabytes, it would really depend on how many files make up that 3 terabyte. But you can see here in a 2.6 terabyte environment with 1.6 million files, this backup is consistently running every hour at 11 minutes. So that first backup, let's say it takes a week, you'll see that sort of cut in half over the period of the next like 5 iterations. And then it hits a steady state after like a week of successful backups where you can really tune that profile for the right frequency of the job. And then when it comes to doing the restore, all we do is we create a recovery location in that hypervisor environment that you're looking to restore into. So that could be ESX, it could be Hyper-V, it could be Azure. And it's effectively a proxy service that just runs and orchestrates the restore into the environment. So if I needed to do an on-demand restore or do a semi-annual DR test, I would come in and select one-time restore. And let's say that's ESX. I would select ESX here. I would select my recovery location that I've created for ESX. I'll select this VM. It looks for me as a security officer to pass it the encryption keys. I have those keys, so I pass it to it. It loads the backup catalog. So if I need to restore from yesterday's backup, I can do that. I select the 223 version. I'm telling it to restore as a brand new VM right into ESX, or I could restore it as a VMDK and import that into ESX. I could pull from local storage as opposed to cloud storage if I wanted to. It recognizes the ESXi environment here based off that recovery location I attached. I could give it CPU memory. I could give it an isolated network to boot into. And then I can add my email so that when this restore completes, I'm going to get a push notification via email that says, hey, this was successful or this failed. So that's your reactive approach to doing it. Mileage may vary on how long that restore process takes because it has a lot to do with the environmentals that are outside of Cove's control, meaning how much data, how many files, what sort of download is available to us. And then, so mileage may vary on that front, and that's one of the reasons, again, we promote the proof of value 30 days, so you get a order of magnitude, but typically we see 3 to 5 gig down as a pretty standard estimate. But if you have a really stringent recovery time objective, that's where we introduce this concept of standby image, where every single time a backup completes, we store it as a bootable VM. So if you have a mission critical application that's got a very low tolerance for downtime, or the business feels the impact every hour or half day that it's down, the standby image technology, because we're doing a continuous proactive restore, disaster strikes, we've already restored that VM over here, have users boot it, give it IP, have users connect into it, and you're back up and operational in a matter of minutes as opposed to mileage may vary type answer. So hopefully that paints a little bit more of a picture. I know it's a long-winded answer, but hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thanks. And let us know. We can always go offline and talk one-on-one with you as well. So yeah, that's great. Really appreciate that. It's a great demo. Every time I see Cove, I find out something new. I get more excited about it. It's cool tech for sure. I mean, it's really, really well done and really helps the users have, better security, smaller data, better RPO, RTO, and yeah, the whole ball of wax. So really, really appreciate that. And
yeah, Todd, I would just to add to that, I'd say it's really sort of enterprise grade security without the enterprise headcount, right? And that's what small to mid-sized organizations really need, is that labor efficient technology that's still hitting on all those security pillars that need to be hit on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So that's great. So hey, really appreciate you taking the time today. Everybody that hopped on this, I really appreciate that as well, and say thank you. as part of our appreciation, we're going to be sending you guys out some Amazon gift cards. So be on the lookout for that over the next few days. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, shoot us a note, help@productivecorp.com, and we'll get them answered. But for now, I'm Todd Obert from Productive Corporation, along with Brian Walsh from Cove Data Recovery, wishing you a fantastic balance of your day and week, and hopefully we'll talk soon. Thank you.